Okay, we're continuing with the Holy Grail of Wisdom quotes by me, Pete Rogers, alphabetical order. This is George Orwell. He lived from 1903 to 1950, so he only died at 47 years of age, pretty young. He was a writer from England in the early to mid 1900s. He had done a lot of work. He had been in India, he'd been in Burma and some other places. He was involved in the Spanish Civil War. He got shot in the neck. He had some tough problems. He initially sympathized with socialism, and he learned the hard way about how evil it is and how it's really related to communism. Okay, he later exiled himself to an island of Jura, to a little cottage he called Barnhill, with no electricity, so he could have some time and privacy to write. That's the main thing a writer needs, is time. Many of the greatest books, they've all been written by exiles. Thucydides was an exile of ancient Greece when he wrote the Peloponnesian War. Cicero was exiled from Rome when he translated books, and he did much of his writing. John, the disciple, wrote Revelations when he was exiled to Patmos. Machiavelli wrote The Prince when he was in exile from Florence. Voltaire wrote Letters from England when he was exiled from France. Hugo wrote Les Mis when exiled. Okay, Dostoevsky did a lot of his best writing in exile. So did John Locke and many others. Boethius when he was in prison. Okay, the consolations of philosophy and so on. Okay, so during happy prosperity, a man is busy with work, women, and family. When exiled, old and lonely, then he's got time to write. So George Orwell, in a sense, wrote this is a quote now by Northrop Frye. He said, George Orwell wrote the Inferno of the 20th century. However inferior he may be to Dante in all literary aspects, he excels him in one point. His hell is real hell, a dreadful state of torment that could last forever and is potentially here now. Yeah, his books are masterpieces. The two masterpieces are Animal Farm and 1984. Okay, now here's a quote by George Orwell. I saw newspaper reports which did not bear any relation to the facts, not even the relationship which is implied in an ordinary lie. I saw great battles reported where there had been no fighting. I saw complete silence where hundreds of men had been killed. I saw troops who had fought bravely denounced as cowards and traitors, and I saw others who had never seen a shot fired hailed as heroes of imaginary victories. And I saw newspapers in London retelling these lies and eager intellectuals building emotional superstructures over events that had never happened. George Orwell. Yeah, and that's how it is now in America. We've got scientific discoveries which are nonsense to sell a drug. Okay. I saw, in fact, history being written not in terms of what had happened, but of what ought to have happened according to the various party lines. This is from when he was writing about looking back on the Spanish Civil War. The Spanish Civil War was evil, and it showed how the communists were evil. They just bumped off the priests, the Spanish Catholic priests. They RAPED'd the Catholic nuns. Okay, they're evil. It's always evil. Atheism always leads to evil because it says life has no meaning, and therefore all that matters is just bump off your enemy. Okay? And anybody who doesn't agree with you is your enemy. So it leads to endless war and fighting, and eventually the roughest and the toughest and the meanest wins, and everyone else is just bumped off or enslaved. Okay? Great. Is that what you want? I don't think so. Autobiographies are overrated because they leave out the humiliating parts. Okay. Orwell continues. Every record has been destroyed or falsified. Every book rewritten. Every picture has been repainted. Every statue and street building has been renamed. This is what's happening in the United States. There'll be some great person, like I knew in some of the areas where I grew up, there would be like a school named after famous American authors, like Emerson, named after Ralph Waldo Emerson. No, America's racist. We have to change and rename it after a black person or after a Hispanic person. That's BS. Okay, what they're doing is they don't care about blacks and Spanish people. They hate them. They hate them. That's just a smokescreen for getting rid of anything by white Christian men. Okay, you need to understand that. That's reality. If they cared about blacks, they would make their schools better, their neighborhoods better. They wouldn't put poison in their water and their baby food. Okay, they don't care about them at all. And I know I'm half Puerto Rican, and I applied. I sent hundreds of letters trying to teach for free, and I was not allowed to teach anywhere, at any high school, at any college, at any med school. No one wanted anything to do with me. All these organizations, not a single one. Okay, what I'm trying to say is if they were trying to help students and they get somebody like me in to teach free study skills, they would jump at the chance, but they don't care about that. What they want is control. Okay, they like an affirmative action puppet to help them ruin an institution. But they don't care about helping minorities. That's all a fake. They want the blacks to help them to destroy the white Christian men, because once he's gone, they think that all the other groups are too small or too weak or too corrupt, can be bought out or crushed or whatever. So that's why they just want to get a coalition of the fringes to destroy the white Christian man, because they think everything else is going to be a cakewalk for imposing, bringing back slavery. That's what's going on. It's been in writing for decades. Okay, so what he's basically saying is that's why they're toppling over the statues, trying to get all the history of the Christian people in America. America was founded as a Christian country by white Christian men, okay? Women were busy having babies. They didn't have much to do with it, okay? Other than be, supporting the family. This is what happened. And right now, they're feminizing the country and pussifying the country because they don't want the country to be able to maintain its history, support itself. There's no such thing as a gynocracy. That's a big joke. There's never been a bunch of women that ever stood up and saved anything, okay? Women take care of their babies and their families. They don't sit and fight toe-to-toe with other men trying to destroy a civilization. They never have, they never will. Okay, let's just be honest. Men and women are very different. And if you feminize the men so that they behave like a bunch of women, then nobody defends a civilization. And that's kind of where we're at nowadays, okay? I'm simply pointing out that everything George Orwell is saying is actually coming true, sadly, but it is, okay? And he said, and the process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has stopped. And I have seen this. The public schools have rewritten history to teach people a lie. I see books written about the history of Europe, the history of the United States, and they're all lies, just written to trick people. Written about the Catholic Church to trick people, written about the Middle Ages to trick people. You see it in nutrition too. All this BS, phony stories, trying to sell the high-fat phony nonsense, trying to sell the high-fat Mediterranean nonsense, trying to sell paleo, keto, carnivore. We have lost integrity in science because there's more money that comes from lying, and we have atheistic Darwinism as our country's worldview. Okay, continue with Orwell. And the process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has stopped. Nothing exists except an endless present in which the party is always right. The past was erased, and the erasure forgotten. The lie became the truth. Yeah, if they control all the books and they control the internet, then you're going to have, big money's controlling all this because it wants to, get rid of the proles. They're going to determine what the truth is. They're going to determine what is right, what is wrong, what is medically indicated. He continues, George Orwell, he who controls the past controls the future, and he who controls the present controls the past. So he who controls the present controls everything. George Orwell, toughness is the price of survival. Circus dogs jump when the trainer cracks his whip, but the really well-trained dog is the one that turns a somersault when there is no whip. Charles Dickens, in his own age and ours, has been popular chiefly because he was able to express in a comic, simplified, and therefore memorable form the native decency of the common man. Dickens is laughing with a touch of anger in his laughter, but no triumph, no malignity. It is the face of a man who is always fighting against something, but who fights in the open and is not frightened. The face of a man who is generously angry. A type hated with equal hatred by all the smelly little orthodoxies which are not tending for our souls. So what he's basically saying is, the average person's a decent person and means well, and I think that's true. But, sadly, the average person's also a functionally illiterate ignoramus, so they do whatever they're sort of pushed into doing, and they don't really think very much. They behave a little bit above an animal, okay? A thinking person would say, gee, Western civilization is the best thing in the world that's ever happened in terms of civilization, therefore I shall try to help preserve it. Okay, that would be a wise thing. There's a reason why everybody wants to move to the West, because the West is great. Okay, but the West is being eradicated, destroyed. And unless people stand up and say, look, no, I want real art in the museum, not this fake modern art crap. I want real food in the store, not this fake processed crap. Unless people do that, the good stuff's not going to come back. George Orwell continues, one difficulty I have never solved is that one has masses of experience which one passionately wants to write about, and no way of using them except by disguising them as a novel. To write in plain, vigorous language, one has to think fearlessly. And if one thinks fearlessly, one cannot be politically orthodox. And that's true too. So anybody who thinks courageously and honestly is always going to contradict the party line, the Communist Party line, the demo you-know-what rat party line, okay? And the essential point here is that all people with small insecure incomes are in the same boat and ought to be fighting on the same side. probably we could do with a little less talk about capitalist and proletarian and a little more about the robbers and the robbed. Yeah, basically everybody's going broke except the big controllers. Okay, that's the end of part 1 on Orwell. It's going to be several parts. He's got a lot of great material. I hope you found that helpful.